Hi, I'm Marcia. A few weeks ago, I handed my parents the keys to a brand new SUV, a gift I saved up for, hoping it might finally mean something. But later that night, while they toasted and celebrated, I watched my sister take credit for everything, and I said nothing. Why would silence ever feel safer than the truth? Have you ever given so much only to feel like you were never really seen? Let me know below. I arrived early, which I never do. The SUV was already in the driveway, washed and gleaming under the soft porch light. I parked down the street on purpose. I didn't want the gift to be the first thing anyone noticed. I wanted the moment to feel intentional, thoughtful. The key was in a velvet box. I must have opened and closed it 10 times in the car before I finally got out. The metal felt warm from my hand, but my fingers were cold. Nerves, probably. Or hope pretending to be nerves. Inside the house, it smelled like lasagna and lemon-scented cleaner. The kind of smell that always made me feel like I was 9 years old again, watching my mom sing to Frank Sinatra while stirring sauce. Tonight, though, her voice was hushed, her movements sharper. Everyone was dressed a little nicer. Tracy wore white, of course, and her husband was already pouring wine like it was his job. I slipped into the kitchen quietly, placing the gift box behind the cake. Dinner passed in waves of chatter. Relatives catching up, laughter in polite bursts. My dad toasted with his usual awkward charm, clearing his throat more times than he spoke. Tracy kept nudging conversation back to herself, her kids, her schedule, her new Vitamix. I nodded along, smiling when required. After dessert, I stood up with the box in my hand. I know this isn't much, I said, which was a lie, but I wanted to give you something that could make things a little easier. Happy 35th. I placed the box in front of my mother. She blinked, opened it slowly, gasps. My mom's hand flew to her chest. "Oh my God," she whispered. My father leaned in confused until he saw the logo. His eyes widened, his mouth a soft, "Oh. Oh, Marcia." My mom looked at me like she'd never really looked before. I smiled, shy and waiting. Tracy clapped first. Light, polite. The rest followed. My mom hugged me. My dad stood up to shake my hand, which felt weird, but okay. And for a breath of a moment, I felt it. Recognition. I was no longer the one who stayed quiet while Tracy received all the praise. I was the one who had done something worth clapping for. Then came the speech. It was after people had started putting away their plates. The music was playing low. My mom waved a hand. "Before we go, anyone want to say a few words?" Tracy stood up before anyone else could answer. Classic. "I just want to thank Mom and Dad," she began, holding her wine glass like she'd practiced this in the mirror. "You've shown us what it means to love and stay strong, even when things got hard. And tonight, this night, wouldn't have been possible without the effort of everyone who helped, especially Derek and I. We pulled it together in 2 weeks." People clapped again. Not a single mention of me. Not the car, not the gift, not even a vague nod. I felt my smile freeze. My fingers curled around my glass. I looked at Mom. She was beaming at Tracy like she'd just won an award. Dad chuckled at something Derek said, already halfway tuned out. Later, near the dessert table, I stood quietly holding a napkin. My Aunt Doris leaned in and said, "You're lucky to have a sister like Tracy. She's the heart of this family, isn't she?" I smiled. Didn't correct her. Didn't say that the heart had thanked herself for hosting a night funded by someone she forgot to mention. Maybe the car didn't matter. Maybe it never did. Maybe I never would. That applause wasn't for me. It never had been. As Tracy pulled Mom and Dad in for another photo, cheeks pressed, arms wrapped tight, I slipped out the back door. The night air slapped my skin, cool and honest. And suddenly, I wasn't sure if the car was a gesture of love or my most expensive mistake. The next morning, the apartment was unusually still. I left the blinds closed and let the soft gray of Portland morning seep through the edges, settling into corners like breath I hadn't let out yet. My phone buzzed with a few texts, mostly photos from last night, faces smiling over cake and candles. But I didn't open them. Instead, I stared at the box on the counter. Velvet-lined, now empty. The key to the SUV was already in their hands. It was real. It was done. I had hoped, stupidly, that it might be enough. Not for validation, but for warmth. For something closer than politeness. By noon, I packed 2 coffees in a cardboard tray and drove back to their house. The engine was smooth, the interior still smelling like leather and optimism. I parked behind their older car, the one I assumed they'd soon be trading in, and walked up the steps with the tray trembling slightly in my hands. My mom opened the door before I could knock. "You didn't have to come by," she said, but she smiled. "I wanted to see how the car's settling in," I said, "and drop off some coffee." The kitchen smelled like toast and lavender cleaner. My dad was at the table, glasses halfway down his nose, flipping through the newspaper like it held secrets only he knew. He looked up when I walked in, nodding. Tracy was nowhere in sight. Mom took her coffee with a touch of cinnamon. Dad drank his black. I knew both. Little details I had learned, stored, and carried. We talked about the party, the food, the guests, nothing about the car. I was waiting for it, some gesture, some word. Then Mom laughed lightly, resting her elbow on the counter. "Well, Tracy said she would have chosen a smaller model, but Marcia went all out, of course." I turned slowly. "What?" Dad chuckled. "Yeah, she said you were really swinging with that one." And then it came. "You're already rich," my mom said, as if she were reciting a grocery list. "Jessica needs this more." Jessica, Tracy, same thing, I guess. I didn't speak, didn't blink. Something inside me sat down and folded its arms. Rich. I was already rich. That's what the car meant to them. Not love, not thoughtfulness. Just proof of a wallet they believed they helped fill. I saw it all too clearly then. The hugs, the thank yous, the applause. They had been for the car, not the person who gave it. Not the daughter. Just the wallet. I stood there, holding a coffee cup that had gone lukewarm. My fingers itched, not with anger, but with something colder. Clarity. All this time, I thought maybe I was earning my place back. Turns out, I was just repaying a debt I never owed. I set my coffee down on the counter, untouched. "Thanks for breakfast," I said quietly. "I've got meetings." Mom nodded like nothing was wrong. Dad turned back to the paper. I didn't wait for a response. I walked out, the door closing behind me like a lid. The car was parked in the sun, reflecting back at me like a mirror I didn't ask for. I slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and rested my hands on the wheel. And for the first time, the car didn't feel like a gift. It felt like a receipt. The week passed like fog, soft around the edges but hard to see through. I didn't call, neither did they. I kept telling myself that was a good thing. Saturday came, and with it, a habit I hadn't quite shaken. I bought groceries, Mom's yogurt, Dad's bread, and a few apples Tommy liked, packed it all in a reusable bag, and drove to the house without thinking too hard about why. Tracy's car was already in the driveway. Of course it was. The front door was open, music humming softly from the kitchen, a station Mom always played with too much treble. I stepped inside, letting the screen door click shut behind me. "Marcia!" Mom called from somewhere in the back. "We were just talking about you." My heart flickered. Hope, maybe, or curiosity dressed in something warmer. Tracy was at the table with a cup of tea and that look on her face. Casual ownership. Like this house had always been more hers than mine. Tommy was somewhere in the living room, giggling at a cartoon. Mom walked in from the laundry room, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Washing machine's finally working again," she said. "Thank God." I nodded. Glad it's sorted. Tracy sipped her tea, eyes skimming her phone. Not a word. Then came the doorbell. A neighbor, one of those women who always smelled like strong perfume and said things like, "Oh my, you haven't changed a bit," to people they'd forgotten. Mom beamed. "Oh, let me introduce you. Tracy stepped up and got the whole thing sorted. Such a dependable girl. We were going to be hand-washing all year if not for her." My mouth didn't move, but something inside me did. I had wired $900 from my business account. Quietly. Mom had asked me on a Tuesday morning. "Only if it's not too much trouble." I hadn't even blinked. Now Tracy was being toasted over coffee and lemon cookies for it. I placed the bag of groceries on the counter. No one noticed. Later that night, at home, I curled up on the couch and scrolled through Facebook. I don't know why I checked Tracy's profile. Maybe part of me wanted to see if she'd posted a birthday picture of Tommy, or maybe I already knew what I was looking for. There it was, a photo of the new washing machine gleaming in the laundry room. Caption, "When you're the one holding the family together behind the scenes." 37 likes, 4 comments, 1 from Mom. "Our girl always shows up." I read it twice, didn't like, didn't reply. I sat there, the room quiet but heavy. I remembered a birthday when Tracy got a pony ride and I got a cake with someone else's name, still faintly visible under the new icing. I remembered asking Mom once, years later, why she never posted about me on her page. She had laughed. "You don't need that kind of validation." Maybe I didn't. But maybe that wasn't the point. I closed the app, but the sentence kept playing louder than any notification. You don't need, you don't need, you don't. The sky was overcast the day of Tommy's birthday party, but the backyard was dressed for sunshine, streamers tugging against the wind, folding tables lined with snacks, and a cake shaped like a cartoon dinosaur. It smelled like wet grass, Capri Suns, and overfrosted cupcakes. I arrived 10 minutes early with the gift balanced on the passenger seat beside me. A custom art tent, canvas walls, washable markers, and his name stitched on top in deep navy thread. I had ordered it 3 weeks ago, added extra tools and tied a small handwritten card. "Love, Auntie Marcia." I walked through the side gate, smiling at a few family friends and brushing raindrops off the gift wrap. No one noticed. Most eyes were already on Tracy, who was adjusting the candles on the cake and giving instructions like she'd organized the city's 4th of July. I placed the gift with the others, double-checked the tag, and let it go. The party blurred the way those things always do. Balloon animals, sugar highs, sticky fingers tugging at sleeves. Tracy's voice carried above the rest, full of cheer and volume. Mom passed around paper plates like communion wafers. Dad stood near the grill pretending to be useful. It was later, after the cake had been sliced and the presents unwrapped, that I saw it. The tent was already set up in the far corner of the yard. Tommy was crawling inside, laughing, tracing his name with a finger. The tag was gone. In its place, a new one, taped to the flap. From Grandma and Mommy. I didn't move. Tracy was beside the tent, smiling for photos, chatting with the neighbor about how much thought they'd put into it. I stood a few feet away, invisible in plain sight. No one corrected the record. Not once. "Thank you, Mommy," Tommy squealed, hugging Tracy's legs. Then he looked up at me. "Are you my mommy's friend?" Laughter erupted nearby, light, unthinking. No one saw the shift in my spine. No one felt the air drain from my lungs. I smiled, reached out and patted his hair. "I guess you could say that." He nodded and ran back into the tent. I walked inside for water I didn't need. My hand shook when I turned on the tap. I stayed there longer than necessary, staring into the sink, listening to voices I couldn't make out, and laughter that somehow felt very far away. The sun came out as I left. In the car, I sat with the engine off, the hum of celebration still bleeding through the windows. I remembered thinking once that losing family meant a fight, a slammed door, a shouted truth. But now I know, it's quieter. It happens in moments like these, when the person who calls you auntie forgets your name, when no one bothers to correct them, when the thing you gave with love is remembered as someone else's gift. I opened the trunk and stared at the leftover wrapping paper, the extra ribbon I hadn't used. Then I closed it, slowly, gently. Not with anger, not with sadness, just absence. It started with a text from Mom. "Can you come by Tuesday? We need help with some paperwork. Nothing major." I didn't think twice. I said yes. That's what daughters do, right? When I arrived, the kitchen was warm with the smell of baked apples and something that tried to feel like comfort. Dad was at the table, flipping through an old photo album, one of the ones Tracy had labeled. Mom stood near the printer with a neat stack of papers in her hand, and that tone in her voice that made things feel routine even when they weren't. "It's just a refinancing thing," she said, placing the papers on the table. "Makes taxes easier in the long run." I glanced at the heading, Property Agreement, and caught my own signature line halfway down. I didn't ask questions. I trusted them. I signed. She smiled, kissed my cheek like it meant something, and tucked the papers into a folder with a practiced flick of her wrist. 2 days later, I stopped by to drop off a new phone charger for Dad, the kind he always misplaces. He wasn't home. Mom was upstairs. I went into the kitchen looking for a notepad to leave a note. The folder was sitting on the counter. I wasn't looking for it. It just was there. The first page had Tracy's name on it in bold. Co-owner, beneficiary, sole transferee. There was no second name. No and, no or, not even a footnote. I flipped through the pages like they might change if I blinked slowly enough. They didn't. I didn't even feel the betrayal all at once. It came in pieces. It came with the realization that this wasn't a mistake, or a clerical thing, or something Dad would fix when he got home. This was decided. I took the folder, walked into the living room, and sat on the couch until I heard her footsteps. Was this supposed to be joint? I asked quietly. Mom didn't sit. She didn't even blink. You're not still keeping track of things, are you? She said, the smile in her voice disappearing. That's not who we are. I opened my mouth, then closed it. You're doing fine, Marcia. You've built your own life. Why stir things up? Don't ask again. You'll only make me sad. I nodded, not because I agreed, but because I was tired of being told I was wrong for noticing what hurt. Dad came in later, said nothing, just patted my shoulder like I was a piece of furniture they hadn't moved yet. I drove home in silence. No music, no phone calls. That night I pulled out my old tax documents, utility bills, bank transfers, emails. I made a folder on my desktop. Phone records. I wasn't collecting ammunition. I was collecting clarity. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for an apology or an invite. I was preparing to choose myself. The envelope was small and bland, the kind you barely glance at before tossing into a drawer. But my name was printed on the front, and the return address was from the city's traffic department. I tore it open at the kitchen counter. Photo evidence, date, time, location, Powell Boulevard. Tuesday at 3:47 p.m. The same Tuesday Tracy had borrowed my car to pick up Tommy from daycare. She had texted me that morning. Your SUV's easier with the car seat. Just a quick trip, promise. I scrolled through our old messages to double-check, then snapped a photo of the ticket and sent it to her. Hey, were you driving on Powell that day? This just showed up. She replied within minutes. Maybe. Didn't think I was speeding. Are you sure it wasn't you like the week before or something? Like always, her deflection was casual, smooth, confident in its slipperiness. My thumb hovered over the screen. I typed, erased, typed again. But nothing I could send would make her say, "You're right, I'll take care of it." I stared at her message until the screen dimmed. That Saturday, I brought it up again over lunch. Mom had made grilled chicken and overboiled rice. Tracy was slicing cucumbers like she was being paid to pretend. I got a ticket from when you had my car, I said quietly. Tracy didn't look up. Yeah? Weird. Maybe the camera glitched. It's photo radar. Oh, she said, and popped a slice of cucumber into her mouth. Mom didn't even wait for a pause. Don't make a big deal, Marcia. It's just a ticket. People are watching how we treat each other. Let's not give anyone anything to talk about. I looked around. No one else said anything. The weight landed on my chest like always, familiar and heavy. Only this time I didn't try to hold it up. I chewed slowly, swallowed, sipped water. After lunch I went home, pulled out my laptop, and paid the fine. I printed the receipt and scrawled across the top with a pen. Not mine. Then I opened my journal. A blank page stared back, asking nothing. I wrote, "Next time they drop a weight on me, I won't pick it up." The next morning, Tracy texted me a link to some new shoes. You'd look amazing in these. No mention of the ticket, no apology, just another thread in a web I wasn't spinning anymore. I didn't reply. Later, while walking through the park, someone called me dramatic in a comment online, a vague jab under one of my videos. I used to laugh those off, but now I didn't laugh. I just answered in my mind, no, I'm just done. The apartment had been quiet for days, an almost sterile quiet, like the air before a storm, or a breath held too long. I worked late, not because I had to, but because the silence made me sharper, more alert to what I was trying not to feel. My latest project was a short animation about boundaries, a child drawing a line in the sand while others kept stepping over it. I hadn't even noticed the metaphor until halfway through sketching the frames. It made me pause. I picked up my phone to check a reference photo. That's when I saw it. A long message from Mom. No greeting, no emojis, just a wall of text. This tension is not what your father and I raised you for. You're tearing this family apart. We've always been there for you. We expected better. My throat closed around a sentence I didn't say. She wasn't asking how I was. She wasn't apologizing for the will, for the silence, for the way Tracy had rewritten my name out of birthday cards and memory. She was accusing. She was rewriting me again, this time not just as invisible, but as dangerous. I stared at the message, trying to remember what I'd done to deserve that title. Saying no, not showing up for lunch, refusing to smile when they ignored me. You're tearing this family apart. It echoed louder than any scream. I didn't reply. I didn't delete it either. Just let it sit there, a weight with no place to set it down. That night, while I was still staring at my laptop, a notification popped up from the family group chat. Tracy had posted a picture of her kids holding a sign that said, "Family = everything." Caption: "Family time is precious." Seconds later, Mom chimed in, "We all love you, Marcia. If only you'd stop making things difficult." I reread that one more than once. No one else said anything. Dad didn't reply. Derek didn't even react. It was a digital room full of people where I no longer existed, except as a problem to be fixed. I put my phone down, let it face screen down like it had betrayed me. The next morning, I opened the chat, clicked "Leave Group," and confirmed it without a second thought. I didn't block anyone, but I muted everyone. I whispered to myself, not out of drama, but because the words deserved to be said out loud at least once. I'm not the problem. I just stopped pretending nothing is. Later that day, I opened my banking app, pulled up the list of automatic transfers labeled family. I canceled every single one. Then I found the most recent receipt, the one marked monthly support. I hovered over the delete button for a second and clicked. For the first time, I didn't feel guilt, just air. It was supposed to be a simple visit. I hadn't stepped foot inside the house since I left the family group chat. But they were out of town for a few days, and Mom had told me I could stop by if I wanted to pick up some of my old sketchbooks. She said it like an afterthought, like she was giving me permission to claim pieces of a childhood that already felt borrowed. The house was quiet, heavier than I remembered. The silence wasn't peace. It was dust that had settled after a storm no one admitted had passed through. I made my way to the study. My father's desk was exactly as he'd left it. Pens aligned, drawer just slightly ajar, and that familiar hum of the overhead fan that never worked quite right. I opened the drawer. Tucked beneath a pile of tax folders and property statements was a manila envelope labeled in neat black marker. Will and transfer. My heart didn't pound. It just paused. I opened it. The legal phrasing blurred as I skimmed the lines, but the name stood out in bold clarity. Tracy Fawn, sole beneficiary. Tracy Fawn, full property rights. Tracy Fawn, full financial executor. There was no "and." There was no "also." There was no me. I reread it. Once, twice. There was no mistake. Later that evening, I sat across from my mother at her dining table, the same place she used to braid my hair and teach me to spell responsibility. I kept my voice steady. Was I ever supposed to be included in the will? She didn't look up, just folded her napkin and said, "You've got your own place, your own life. You're successful. The car is for the family, Marcia, not just you." That was it. That was her answer. The car I'd bought, the down payments, the support, the silence, all for the family. A few days passed. Then my phone rang, Tracy. I didn't pick up at first, but she called again and again. The fourth time, I answered. "What kind of person cuts off their own family?" she shouted before I could say hello. "You've always been jealous, always trying to make it about you. You think just because you have money, you're better? You've never been one of us. That's why they picked me." I let her yell. Every word was something I didn't need to carry anymore. I hung up before she could finish. I thought that was it. I really did. Until a colleague at my studio stopped me after a meeting. "Hey, I didn't want to pry, but Tracy reached out to me. Said you've been a little off lately. Is everything okay?" I smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach your eyes. She said that? Yeah. She said she was worried, mentioned family stress, said she thought someone should know. I thanked him, walked back to my office, closed the door, and sat down at my desk, looking out over a city that had watched me rebuild more times than it knew. This wasn't about family anymore. This was about erasure, from legacy, from memory, from reputation. That night, I changed the title on the car, removed their names, and in my journal, under a fresh date and an even fresher sense of finality, I wrote one line. No more gifts, just exits. No calls, no texts, not even the subtle echo of a group chat notification. The silence didn't start as peace. It began as absence, hollow and wide. But over the days that followed, I realized I didn't miss the noise. I didn't miss being the recipient of tasks disguised as affection or guilt camouflaged as care. In the quiet, my work came alive again. My sketches took on depth, my edits sharpened. I poured everything into a new animation project, not because I had to, but because I finally had space to create something that wasn't about proving anything to anyone. One afternoon, I opened the folder I had labeled Fawn Records. It had lived on my desktop like a quiet warning, a trail of evidence I no longer needed to carry. I hovered over the files, screenshots, receipts, bank transfers, and then hit delete. Not because I forgave them, but because I didn't need the proof anymore. I knew what happened. I survived it. I thought about the car again, about the way my mother's hand trembled when she first opened the key box, about how quickly that moment faded into convenience. I thought about the will, the birthdays, the second-hand apologies that never came. I let the memories come. I let them sting. Then I let them go. Later that night, I wrote a letter I never intended to send. It began, I don't hate you. It continued, but I can't keep walking toward people who only see my back. I folded the letter and placed it in a small box tucked inside my closet, labeled Unsent Things. It joined a handful of other unsaid truths, notes I had written to Tracy, to Mom, even one to myself when I was 23 and couldn't pay rent but still sent money home. That weekend, I booked a trip, somewhere coastal, no signal, just salt air and the kind of quiet that doesn't demand anything from me. The night before I left, I met a friend for coffee on a rooftop cafe. The city stretched around us, golden and soft. We laughed about something small. I don't even remember what. But I remember that I laughed. Not the polite kind. The real kind. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a message from a coworker about lunch plans next week. I responded with a smile. I didn't flinch. I didn't brace for impact. For the first time, my name, Marcia, felt like it belonged to me alone. The past didn't chase me, but it waved from a distance, and I waved back, without stepping closer. Sometimes, the hardest distance to walk is the one between who you were and who you choose to become. I didn't leave because I stopped loving them. I left because I started loving myself enough to stop shrinking. If you're in a place where your worth is constantly questioned, I want you to remember this. Love shouldn't cost your voice, your peace, or your identity. Choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. Have you ever walked away from a family dynamic that no longer felt like home? What was the moment that made you realize enough was enough? I'd love to hear your story. If this video touched something in you, leave a 1 in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. And if it didn't resonate, that's okay too. Let me know why. I'm here to listen. And if you want more stories that reach into the quiet corners of the heart, don't forget to subscribe. Your next chapter might just start here.